Hello and welcome to Secrets of the Score. I'm here with Charlie Clouser and he's going to tell us what we're going to take a listen to today.
Hi, welcome to Secrets of the Score. We're going to listen to some cues from the 8th movie in the Saw horror movie franchise. This one's going to be titled Jigsaw and it'll be out in theaters Halloween 2017. What I've got up on screen now is a cue called Bucketheads, which appears in within the first 5 minutes or so of the Jigsaw film. And this is kind of when the first group of victims, they kind of wake up from their drug-induced coma, and they've got buckets on their heads. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then things do not go well for them, as you can imagine. Nothing ever goes well for victims in a Saw movie.
Right.
And it starts off with a kind of bit of quiet, ambient weirdness as they're kind of waking up and taking stock of their situation. And then a little while later, after 2 or 3 minutes into the cue, the action really starts when the trap starts being sprung, and that's when the drums kick in and all kinds of heavy distorted synths and so forth start happening. So I can play the kind of first chunk of the cue from the beginning when we first cut into this room and these people are waking up. There's a few kind of trademark Saw sounds in this section, which I'll go back and isolate.
Cool. Yeah, it definitely sounds ominous. It's not like a Happy Meal time.
No. You know, as with many of these cues, this is kind of welcome back to the world of Saw. So there's that little string part is a theme from an earlier movie that I've adapted.
There was those little 2 chords. That was actually pretty.
And this kind of underwater slow drum beat thing is also kind of a Saw tradition. Whenever the victims are listening to the little micro cassettes with Jigsaw's voice on them, telling them how badly they're screwed, there's a couple of sounds and feels that are kind of a trademark of that, and they kind of, whenever the tape starts, these sounds start in the score across all of the movies. So, and then they get to about here and they stop their little tape and then they're in deep shit. So I'll stop it there and I'll go through a few of these sounds. You can kind of see on my screenshot here that I have about, I think in total my template for this cue is 280 tracks, but I'm not using all 280 of them. It looks like I'm using, I don't know, half of that. I'm going to solo these objects and play them just by themselves so we can hear what the heck is going on. And I'm not even sure what we're likely to hear. Okay, there's a very thumpy or industrial kind of kick drum element. That's hitting on a piano, on a low piano string with a mallet. Those things combine to make these hits at the beginning. Those and a kick drum add up to those kind of smashes that occur at the very beginning.
Sounds killer.
Along with some orchestral strike effects just to add a little bit of that width and depth that you get from orchestral sounds. There's another layer to that. Yeah.
Impact.
Just kind of slightly atonal string chugs. And all of those things combined make this thumping thing at the very beginning. And those hits are occurring as the pictures got sudden, rapid cuts between the people's shocked faces and the terrible room they're in and so forth. So that's almost not even music. It's more of a sound design element to just add impact to these crazy cuts. Most of the stuff in my template here it's all samples. That is actually a sample of guitar. That's just a tiny little molecule of guitar. Yeah, its normal pitch is somewhere around here, but when played way down here, 3 or 4 octaves below that, wow, it becomes a really evil, girthy, dark sound. And that's something I do a lot of, is taking sounds which have a certain character when played at their normal pitch, but then pitching them way down, and which is also, I'm not time stretching or pitch shifting, I'm just doing it old school sampler style. The sound gets slower as it gets lower in pitch. Most of the things in my working palette are samples and are just being played in the normal EXS24 sampler that comes for free with Logic. And I've been using this as my main sampler engine for almost 20 years. I know it inside and out. It is by no means nearly as fancy as Native Instruments Contact, for instance. It's a very basic sampler, but it's very similar to the old rack-mounted Akai samplers that I kind of grew up on. I can have a huge template that has 240 instances of EXS, and the computer doesn't choke at all. Even on my biggest cues, I have a Mac Pro 12 core, the cylinder. I'm at about 25% of CPU usage. You know, most of my music is created from small molecules of sound all piled together. And for that kind of application, EXS24 is great. You know, one of my favorite categories of sounds is bowed metal instruments, like this sculpture that's sitting in the back of the room. And so I use a lot of these sounds to just create a murky ambient backdrop. Another category of sounds that I make a lot of my own recordings of and use a lot are heavily processed guitars. I tend to prefer using sounds that came from an acoustic or organic source, like the bowed metals or torturing a piano or processed guitar sounds, as opposed to straight out synthesizer sounds that come from, you know, oscillators and filters. I have a whole palette of things that were made for the first Saw movie, which are kind of characteristic, that were all made with a lap steel guitar being played with a violin bow, pitch shifted down 2 octaves using a whammy pedal, and then put through a bunch of delay and stuff. And those sounds would be like these kind of things. And they're spooky and scary, but they're not a synthesizer. This is kind of some of the grab bags of the Saw sounds. You know, this is another trademark that is just plucking a bass with a lot of delay feedback from the best pedal ever made, the green Line 6 delay pedal, which has a great way of letting the sound destroy itself as it repeats. I'm not sure if it's in this template, but one of my most used sounds on the TV series Numbers, which I scored for many years on CBS, is a sample, a recording that I made on a cassette Walkman in 1982. The first time I visited New York City, and I was in the subway, and when the subway trains would pull into the station, their screeching brakes echoing in the subway station to me sounded amazing. So I recorded the sound of that. I put them, mapped them to the keyboard because they had a definite pitch to them, and the original recording is something like that. But played lower on the keyboard, it becomes a very scary, almost a string section type of sound. And that's just one recording, just mapped across the whole keyboard. And it evolves and goes through changes that were built into it from the act of the subway train squealing its brakes. So the longer you hold down the notes, the more you kind of hear of this evolving sound. And again, it started out with just this screechy little sound. And that was one of the first field recordings that I ever made. And I still use it. I used it all over the TV series Numbers. And I still have that sample in my template to this day. And it's been with me for about 30 years now. Now I'm going to play the second half of this cue, and I'll just let it play the whole way through. Now some synthesizer. A lot of things rising in pitch over a long period of time. So that whole segment of this cue is obviously when the trap is being sprung on these poor victims and they're struggling to escape. Mayhem. It just needs to be utter mayhem and pounding drums and drum machines and distorted guitars and just a mess of ugly, ugly, aggressive sounds.